Construction loans made easy.
All right, Jarrett and Jeremiah, thanks so much for joining. How you guys doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Very
Awesome.
good.
Well, as you know, we are going to be chatting about high performance building as well as budgeting today. So I'll jump right into the high performance side. I guess just broadly, how do you or how do people mostly define high performance building?
Well, I mean, in terms of high performance building, a lot of it is in the quality control, but in general, you have more quality indoor air quality. Sorry, you have more durability in the home. You just have a better built home overall, and then you do use some upgraded materials and methods when you're doing your building.
Yeah, a little more purposely built, designed. I think is the intent there. The key part is being designed in a high performance direction. Right, it comes down to the details, the intricacies of and the interplays of the different mechanical systems in the envelope of the home, and making sure that kind of you're thinking through all of those things through the design and the actual execution process.
And how much green building and energy efficiency building plays into high performance? They're not exclusive to each other, correct?
Right. I would say they're almost independent. They kind of get tied into each other because people don't know how to describe or kind of summarize what they're looking for. So green kind of gets tied into a lot of it. Eco, sustainable, like a lot of these buzzwords kind of get tied into each other. So we ask a lot of questions when we're talking to people to really dig down deep to understand what they're really looking for, and thus on our side as well almost over explain what we do in the ways that we do it, because we really want to make sure that people understand. I think a lot of times the word green or eco-friendly, they come with a connotation of sacrifice or, kind of having to give something up or not get something that they might have wanted because of that kind of interplay. But really high performance, the differentiation there is a lot of high performance things go into the behind the walls, kind of the mechanicals and the systems that go into your house. Really not much sacrifice on the overall end result, the design, the things that are most important to people on that finishing side of that.
You mentioned some of those initial questions. I guess broadly, what are some of the initial questions that you have for clients after, of course, they ask you a ton of questions first, but what are some of those questions to try to nail down exactly the type of home that you think they're looking for?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of the high performance specifically,
Yes.
I mean, a lot of times people will actually ask if they have to sacrifice something in design in order to get a more efficient, better built home. And a big part of our process is just education in general. So we believe in high design. We want to be building custom homes. We want to build exactly what they want. Custom home building can be a very profound experience for people. So we want them to have that strong connection with their home at the end of it. That being said, just educating people that high performance comes a lot in the form of quality control throughout construction. So, we're making sure every day on site that everything is being done exactly how we need it to be done to properly seal the home for air quality and air sealing, how to properly get the right techniques so that we can get the most insulation as possible, guiding people on certain types of windows and ratings that they should be looking into. So there's very little sacrifice. And actually we found that, the cost difference does not have to be that big between building high performance and not. We've priced out both.
Yeah, and it's really
Absolutely.
about, I mean, when people use those buzzwords, those keywords, because we're all used to searching in Google for things, but it's really the difference in searching in Google versus using AI, right? Where you got to get a little deeper. It's asking those penetrating questions to just truly understand what they really mean when they say the high level words, right? If are you really looking for comfortable? Are you looking for something that's going to last the test of time? Are you looking for, sustainability through materials, or making sure that you're doing something good and you're not being wasteful in the process of building a home? What direction is most important to you? And then, are you open to kind of exploring all of those things at once by being a little more mindful through the design process?
I would imagine most people, you're building their primary residence for a home they plan on living for a long time. So they're thinking about more the longer term play versus short term spec flip or anything like that, I would assume.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, we get some people that come in that want to be, completely have a self-sustaining house, and it's really fun because we can certainly guide them in the right direction. We're doing a lot of really innovative things right now with geothermal energy. We're looking into some solar fencing, all kinds of fun stuff. But people can take it as far as they want to go, and then just being the guide is what we're here for.
Are there any, what are the top features or systems that kind of really define, from your perspective, a high performance home?
Yeah, well, so from the features, it's really going to come down to that exterior envelope. Again, things you're not going to see when you're inside your house, but the things under the siding and the things inside of the drywall, between that siding layer and that drywall layer, that really create the envelope of the house, the envelope to keep, the inside in and the outside out, and then control the interchange of those two. And then the actual the piece, the component of that does that is the lungs of the house, the HVAC systems. So those two systems working hand in hand together are really the things that make the biggest impact in the high performance housing.
There's always that term I've heard over the years: the house is too tight. Um, and that was many, many moons ago. I would imagine that really is not the case anymore in thinking about a home that might be too tight. Like you said, about keeping the outside out and the inside in.
Yeah, and it really our roles in building have kind of evolved as well as GCs, right? Our whole mission is education. Everything that we do is about educating the homeowner, the client who's building this custom home, on how the tactics and the techniques within construction have evolved. The products have evolved. The mechanical components have evolved, and using those techniques, it's not just you can't just go and put something in your house and say I have a high performance home because my HVAC system is efficient, right? It's a high efficiency furnace. If your envelope is not sealed properly, you're just bleeding all of that air back and forth, and that component's going to keep running. So that's one example. But within this, we've really become educators in the process and really making sure that you look at the whole house as a system, every component that you're putting in it with a mindful intent of being high performance. Because a house can still be too tight if you don't do the right things and have the right components to help that house perform the way that it needs to when it is an airtight, very tightly sealed house. Because you can
Gotcha.
trap moisture, you can trap toxic, VOCs, all of these different things can get trapped inside your house. You want to make sure that if the house is completely airtight and sealed really, really well, the way that a high performance home is, that you've done all the other things that need to be done.
In terms of, you had mentioned that you don't really have to sacrifice too much in terms of cost to have more of a high performance house. Are there things that are clearly a little more expensive that clients don't need to have necessarily, but things you might recommend to really consider, especially if it's going to be a home that's going to be their long-term home?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of it can be incremental costs too. Like for foundation, I mean, everything starts with foundation, right? I mean, in order to create the water barrier that people should have, we completely encapsulate the foundation in a waterproofing system that involves rigid foam and essentially a dimpled membrane, plastic membrane on the outside of that. But the goal of that is to create barriers for water so that they can't actually get to the foundation and then work their way in. So you're fighting it with some simple techniques that sure they come with some incremental costs, but it's worth it all day long for the value that you get on the other end.
Yeah, it's funny if you're planning it from the beginning versus trying to retrofit or go in the opposite direction. It's way more efficient when we're doing the new construction approach of planning these things in. One great case study that we just did recently is we did a side by side of one of our houses that was going through the design process. We had our lumber supplier actually price out that house with more your traditional building components of exterior sheathing, the framing techniques versus the way that we frame, and then some of those sealing membranes and taping methods. they price it out in one direction, the way more of a traditional builder would come to them with the framing package, and then they priced it out the way that our framing package was designed. And for a 2,800 square foot above grade home, it was a difference of $600 in the building materials themselves.
Yeah, negligible.
A lot of what we do really comes down to the management on site, the quality control from both the trades and from your builder, making sure that everything's done in a very systematic approach in the field.
So I guess it certainly makes sense if you're starting fresh, brand new home, brand new lot, brand new foundation, et cetera. I guess for homes, a lot of clients aren't building brand new homes, right? They're maybe in some cases, maybe doing a gut rehab of their entire home, or maybe a home that they bought recently. Good bones, as they say, right? Is it possible, but a little more difficult to uh, do more of the high performance features in a home that's not brand new, or is it just as possible as long as you're maybe going down to the studs?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's so many things, but everything we would advise would always start with that building envelope, right? And really, putting a lot of extra insulation into that attic space, making sure the hat is on the house here for those winter and summers, so that you're not just letting all the air out through there. Your exterior walls, I mean, windows become a big factor, and I know that it's been great because there's been a lot of incentives, tax rebates, things like that, to go and upgrade your windows. But upgrading your windows, it accomplishes that nice design refresh, gets you a nice ROI on the home, and you can do the window package itself. And a lot of these things still have rebates and incentives that are out there to help pay for those things.
And there's a pretty wide range on windows. I guess just to touch on that a little bit, what are some of those features on windows that really are the difference between things you really should get for high performance versus things you could pass on?
Yeah, absolutely. Style wise, you can go operation to operation. As long as you're going with a really quality manufacturer of windows, operation shouldn't really matter. Double hung, single hung, casement windows, all of those things, when locked and closed, should be properly sealed and remain pretty airtight. Overall, when you're going to a window package, you can also get some additional glazing that can help reflect the light versus letting it through. And then the most common thing is going to be, especially if you're like here in Chicago and you're in an older building with single pane windows, you're getting
Right.
frost on the inside all winter long. Getting those to at least a double pane or a triple pane in our line of work is more common. But going to something that's filled with a gas, like an argon gas or something like that, that's also going to be a little more efficient, can make a big difference and have a very small budgetary impact.
Also with different materials, you've got just making sure that you have a good thermal break inside of the window. So you could have windows that have all different types of material, wood on the inside, aluminum cladding on the outside. But there's a lot of products that have fiberglass on the outside or vinyl in the very center, just because different materials are better insulators of heat than others. So again, just working with a good manufacturer and telling them what your goals are, they'll be able to point you in the right direction. And all the major manufacturers are making good products that have, windows with that good thermal break in them.
I remember growing up with that frost on the inside of the window, and you get that plastic, and you put the bubble over the window and get the blow dryer out to tighten it up for the winter. So,
Home Depot still sells quite a bit of those packs for
sure. Relative to high performance house and the style of home, from the traditional to every other style of home, are there certain styles that are easier to do high performance, or is it really every possible style is possible? You just have to change up the techniques.
Yeah, I mean, more the latter. I mean, that's what's really nice about it, is that anyone of any style preference can build a high performance home. We find that a lot of people that are interested in some of those techniques lean a little more contemporary. But that being said, I mean, it's the simpler the house design in terms of the shape in general, the easier it is to really pack in the features. But there's no style of house that we wouldn't be able to to perform the right quality control techniques on to make it high performance.
Right. And we get heavily involved during the design. We like to be involved during the design and architectural phases, for helping with consideration around home orientation, taking advantage of natural light through larger window areas, making sure that you're not sacrificing privacy or anything like that in those. But then also, we're here in Illinois, so taking advantage of that southern exposure where you're going to get the most natural light all day long, getting those roof lines oriented in that direction as well for future solar additions. Just making sure that you're planning through all of those things. And if you're building a really big building, consider the colors that you're using as well, because those things are going to absorb or radiate the temperature from the sun and its UV rays.
For sure. And I would imagine as time has moved on, building codes have become more and more of a factor when building a home. Certainly there's pros and cons to that. It puts more cost into the home, but it also makes the home safer and better. Are a lot of the building code evolution, if I can call it that, the building code evolution kind of forced a lot of people into some of these high performance aspects? And I guess where do you see some of the building codes really pushing some of these high performance features moving forward?
Yeah. I think I to applaud some of the code. It takes a long time for building codes to catch up to kind of modern living and the environmental changes and shifts, because it's a lot of political and bureaucratic, and there's due process that goes into updating those things, right? So we've always built with the California codes kind of in mind, because they're a little farther ahead of us than some of our codes more locally here in Illinois. But to applaud local municipalities, they are catching up. We have seen a lot of bigger jumps in the codes for energy code in particular here in Illinois. So they are catching up. They're up alongside of some of the building standards we used to build to maybe 3 or 4 years ago in a lot of these places. So it's really great to see. And what it's doing is it's forcing a lot of people who previously wouldn't have been thinking in these directions to have to get a little more mindful of how they're doing their exterior wall assemblies, because we have to meet certain performance standards now. One of the things that we do more standard in most of these municipalities, you have to actually go through some performance testing to get your final inspections approved, where they do what's called a blower door test, where they're essentially testing the indoor air sealing of the home. They're creating a pressurized environment, and then they're monitoring the flow of air, the exchanged air from the inside to the outside in that environment. So they're managing that, they're monitoring that, they're looking for air leakage. And they're also testing out your ductwork system, your mechanical system, to make sure that your high efficiency furnace, again, is not just like leaking air throughout the house because your ducts aren't sealed well, and you're not getting the CFMs in the different rooms that are farthest away from your furnace as you are the ones that are closest. So they're really starting to step up, not just the codes of it, but the testing and the maintaining of what those codes are saying. So we're really proud of it.
I would imagine when you're trying to get your occupancy certificate, it's a bad time to fail those tests.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you don't want to be failing, especially a air duct leakage test at that stage where you got to rip some things open and find out where things are going. So, we really think it's going to become the standard. High performance building today will continue to evolve and remain ahead of the curve, but the curve is definitely shortening. And it's going to be more the practice, especially in a climate like ours. I think most climates are kind of like that, where we have these big shifts in the seasonality of what's going on. So you're just making sure your house is more comfortable. If we're building new construction, people are paying a premium for what they're building and designing. We want to make sure that those things are comfortable and outperform what their standards are.
Looking 5-10 years down the road, do you see any sort of whether it be forced through building codes or just other features that you see more and more homes including as far as high performance?
Yeah, it's a good thought. The only thing that comes to mind like immediately for me is going to be what happens with the energy grids, and kind of how we as consumers of that in home ownership become responsible for some of that. They've done it through commercial buildings for a long time, requiring them to be LEED certified, have solar, potentially be ready for these things. How we all integrate and consume energy, I think, is going to be the biggest focus as we move forward. So we'll see what those requirements are, and then there's murmuring, future future natural gas and kind of where that goes in residence as well. So that may be getting phased out of our world, where they won't allow new construction, residential new construction, to have natural gas hooked up, and you're going to be relying even more on the electrical meters and things like that. So I think solar evolution is going to continue to play a part in residential high performance.
Awesome. Let's flip over to budgeting, because that's where the loan guy starts to get involved. It's interesting. In many cases, I'll have an initial conversation with a client who's wanting to build a home and has some numbers in mind. I always say, I know it's early, but where do you think you might be, right? And it's really interesting, and we'll get into specifics on certain budgeting items here, but I'm always interested in that from the client perspective, from when I have that conversation before they have the conversation with you. Do you get a sense why their numbers are so off, in just based on the conversations that you're having with them?
So I'll start. So I certainly, I would say that a lot of it comes through with that education piece from the builder on what goes into the project in general, because they're looking online at existing homes on the market, even new construction homes being sold on the market, and they're getting kind of a general understanding as to what the prices are going to be. However, people don't always understand all the different buckets of costs that go into the project in general. So, I mean, you have your land value, right, which can be anything. I mean, you could buy a piece of land for $100,000, you could buy a piece of land for $1 million, whatever that ends up being. That's a line item. Then you have your development costs, which are going to be all of the different expenses that have to do with building on that specific site. So you're going to have your civil engineering, you're going to have your potential demolition costs, your site grading. I mean, there's good landscaping. There's a ton of things that go into how big is your lot, how deep is your lot, how narrow is your lot, what is the orientation of your lot, is it in incorporated or unincorporated areas, all of those things. And then you also have your architectural and design fees that go into the design of the home, which can be a lot more than people realize. But we highly encourage people to spend the money on really quality design. Because the better you are, the better your architectural process is, and interior design process is, the smoother the build's going to be, and more confidence you can have going into the project. Then you have your rough construction costs, which are what the builder has the most control over, is the actual rough structure of the home, and then all of obviously the interior design finishes, which you could buy a $5,000 appliance package. You could buy a $100,000 appliance package. And that's just one of thousands of decisions that have to go into a custom home. So I think once people really start to understand all of the different things that go into the process, they start to hear numbers, and they make more and more sense as to why it is going to be the most expensive way to get yourself a house, is to custom build one.
Yeah. To build off your point, I mean, so one of the things too is, like, when did you get a builder involved? I think is what you see in that process, because architects are really great at broad price per square foot, kind of giving you those buckets of, hey, this is going to be roughly this or that. So what you end up is with this generalized number, and then as you start to get the builder involved, and they really start to put some more concrete, more defined line items to it, you're going to get a little more detail and a little more like, oh, we didn't think of that, or, oh, wow, okay, I didn't know we were going to need 2 systems instead of 1 in any any given area, right? And then the fun part of what we see when people are in with us early and we're working through it is you're doing a bit of a dating process early in the process.
Okay.
Not everyone's kind of giving their cards, right? So Jarrett and I, we like to have what we call a human approach. We try to create an environment where we can be human, right? You need to understand that in order for all of this to go really, really well, we need to build a partnership and a relationship as early and as fast as possible. And you need to be really comfortable with who your builder is, because that relationship is going to set the tone for all of this and how this comes together, right? If you want it to go very smoothly and efficiently and collaboratively, you kind of need to get open and get on the same page and and really understand where those things are. We've seen from the sales process, people stated budgets out loud to what they really end up telling us their budgets are as we work through their wants and must-haves. It really starts to broaden up a little bit. So we typically wouldn't even have them engage with a bank until we got through all those wants and must-haves and really truly understood what people are looking to build.
Yeah, and as a consumer, I know I always, not necessarily from a home builder, but things in life when somebody says, "What's your budget?" and I'm like, "Well, I don't know. This is the first time I'm doing this. I don't know what I get for whatever I'm paying for." So that's got to be that, like you said, that dating aspect, right? Trying to figure out what you're looking for, and which I imagine is really step one. Is first they would come up with the wish list, and then that's where you would start to have that conversation, I would assume.
Yeah, and we try to help them out too, because one of the big stumbling hurdles in that process is really them trying to understand how much money we're going to make as their builder, right? Because once they don't want to keep saying things and we're just racking up dollar signs in our heads, right? So we've really evolved our process. We've come to a fixed price management fee that we've developed here, and we just think that it just levels the playing field, gets the conversation open and flowing, and it puts us on a shelf that we don't have to think about anymore as far as a dollar line item. Our number's not going to continue to move because you tell us you want all these different features in your house. We know the complexity of what we do and how much time it's going to take us to do it. We can put that up on the shelf. Here's what that number is. The rest of this budget, let's be open and let's figure out how we get to the best budget for the home that you want.
Yeah, I could totally see that people are thinking about if somebody's going to make 10 or 15% on every line item, they're really holding back on some of the items that maybe they really ultimately want to have in that home.
Right. And that's where we kind of jump in and make sure people aren't like, okay, what are the things I could do later myself, or things like let's not do this game of, okay, include this, don't include that, we'll do this later. Let's do it all now, because it actually is going to be the cheapest method for you overall.
And do you start with, in terms of cost, as part of the discussion, almost like, okay, how big of a home do you want? So your base costs, and I think Jarrett, you and I have chatted about this in the past, that your base costs for just the base stuff is going to be around X, but really the real cost is going to all depend on what you're going to put inside that home.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it starts early on too, right? Because your window packages, we're finding a lot of people that want this indoor-outdoor living experience with floor-to-ceiling windows and all of these things. I mean, that's going to have a dramatic impact on your budget, because those are some of the big ticket items. So we certainly like to have a lot of meetings up front where we find out what are those big ticket items. If we know that somebody really wants this dynamite outdoor patio with an outdoor kitchen and all of that, great. Let's work to focus the dollars there, and then we can help you on areas that we think you can trim down. And then with having that fixed management situation, it's great because we can pass along any builder discounts that we can get from our suppliers, and then
Awesome.
people understand that. After having those conversations, they understand that we're not actually manufacturing their kitchen appliances, right? You're going to get the same price for that no matter where you go. So we can show them, here's what you want, here's what that costs. That's that line item, and you really just have to chip away at each and everything. But understanding as early as we can what's the real important things for that individual client, the better we can guide them on it.
And are there any areas that clients generally tend to underestimate costs on a consistent basis that they really should think a little bit more about?
Yes.
I would say the biggest surprise area tends to come from site development type things, right? A lot of these municipalities, they have some pretty stringent requirements for site management as far as stormwater management in most cases goes, right? Nobody wants water pooling up on their properties, and they certainly don't want you pooling it up on other people's properties. So it's a lot about that. And in some of these properties, you have to dramatically either reshape those properties or include on your property some way to create detention areas for this water runoff, especially with these major downpours that we have here more regularly. So there's a lot of things that go into properly regrading and getting a property to the place where it meets all of the local municipality codes and what goes into that process. So I think that's the most surprising area to a lot of people where money can come into play. Anything?
Yeah, there are lots. Land costs. If people come to us when they don't have a property to build on to, this is such a tough market, and it has been ever since the pandemic. It really created this intense supply and demand situation when it came to real estate in general. And one nice thing about our company is that we also own a real estate company as well. And
Awesome.
so we can help people really as early as, hey, I want to build a house. Where do I start? If they don't have a piece of property, we can help them even from that point. Do zoning analysis, understand what they can build on what size property in what areas and all of that. But that's a kind of a sticker price, because when people think of land, it should be more affordable. However, right now, especially if you want to be in somewhere with like really great walkability, an in-town location, you're going to be paying for land. You're going to be paying the price of a house. Because they don't really, even if it's a tear down, you won't see a lot of shift down in the price point that the seller is expecting to get, and because they typically are getting pretty close to market value. So that's a big one too.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of teardowns. It's like you could have a really nice house that people want to bid on because it's a really nice house, and then you have the middle, and then the house that is really not a good house. Then that gets bid up because people want to tear it down to build a
Right.
home on.
Right. Yeah, and there's a lot of competition in there as well.
Competitive across
And a lot of cash competition.
Right.
So I would imagine for consumers, those can be a little tougher unless they plan on paying for the house cash and then building, which sometimes we see that clients will come in, whether it be raw land or tear down, pay cash, and then whatever they paid cash for counts as their down payment towards the construction.
Right.
Yeah.
In terms of contingencies, that's always a topic clients ask me about. And, conversation I have with them is it shouldn't really be, especially on a brand new home versus a rehab addition. It shouldn't be you shouldn't need that much of a contingency as long as you're taking the time going through the process that you guys are talking about in terms of putting money aside for any sort of contract changes. Do you guys have a certain amount that you recommend? I know you spent a ton of time going through, the entire budget and plan. I guess the adjacent question would be, what are some of the things that clients were totally on board with before you started, which then they changed their mind a little bit and upgrade during the process?
Well, I would say you nailed it kind of overall on the overarching theme of kind of approaching the budget. And then again, working from new construction, being in collaboration with the builder and the architect early on to kind of work through the budget as they go through that design process. We really shouldn't be entering construction or closing construction loan with too many contingencies needed, if any at all, really, because we've kind of discussed and talked through. We've done site exploration for any of the things that we need to. There could be still some minimal things that are concealed conditions, which would live underground when you're starting to dig, that didn't get caught by our soil borings or things like that. But outside of that, I mean, we should have had most conversations about the things you want in your home, already have the design pretty much, finished at that point as far as the architectural plans. So everything should be kind of well thought out and be included and budgeted for in that overall comprehensive budget that gets submitted to close the loan. So I don't think, again, unless you're getting the builder in at the very end because you're like, I want to go build now, that could lead to, hey, you should probably throw some contingencies in because we haven't had a chance to go through everything. We haven't had a chance to price out and bid out these items at this point. And or there's some components in here that we haven't priced out recently. So,
which I imagine and at times you're probably trying to rein in the client from moving too quickly to ensure that you go over all the various options and costs, so there aren't the surprises, because surprises aren't good for anybody during the construction phase. Because on a construction loan, as you guys know, if you close with a budget, pick a number, $700,000 budget, and all of a sudden 6 months in you're at 800, the client needs to come up with those additional funds dollar for dollar as they occur.
Yeah. And luckily we've been doing this long enough that we can help educate them. Once we have, I know you guys do it and we reaffirm it. It's once we sit down with them, it's like, okay, you got to take the time. We work hand in hand on the appraisal process as well, because it's just as important, especially when you're building a high performance home, to make sure that the appraisal process goes through very smoothly. You're getting the value for the home that you're going to put into it, so on and so forth. So we're heavily involved in that budgeting process and well versed in all the construction lending components as well. Just to make sure people are taking the thoughtful consideration and the time to go through that budget and properly plan for construction and the funding of the construction loan before rushing through that process. We like to do everything kind of interlapping, right? So it doesn't need to be this long drawn out thing if done, again, in the right sequence alongside of the other processes, because we have all this time during architectural design development and the permitting process that are going to be those critical path items to get you to start construction, that if we're working alongside of all of those things, we have plenty of time to really work through that, dial that in with you, build that relationship and the comfort on the finances with our client, and really get it to a place where once we enter construction, we're just off and running.
Yeah, I would add that, the more work you do up front has everything to do with the experience that they're going to get in general for the whole process, because we like to get people excited about this, because they are building a custom home, but everybody's got a budget, right? Everyone's answer is, I don't want to spend a dollar more than I have to. Then you get to
I want all that stuff.
Exactly. I mean, everyone wants all the stuff, right? So, and I get it. So one thing we try to do is get people comfortable with the fact that they're going to spend a lot of money on this home as a whole. So try to understand what's really important to you. I mean, if you want, I can pick your light fixtures and save you a lot of money. But your designer is going to hate me, right? So you can do anything you want, but you are building a custom home. There's a lot of decisions, and you're going to want what you're going to want. And people don't, the money side of it, holds them back. But then when they get past the loan closing, when they get past the big stages, and now it's time to pick out the appliances, the plumbing fixtures, the light fixtures, the flooring, all these things, that's when people really start to say, well, I really want this. And then the education piece on, you can still have it, but at that point in time, there's a cash event that has to happen.
Very cool. Well, this has been awesome, guys. Jarrett and Jeremiah from Ethos Builders, I appreciate you guys taking the time, sharing your knowledge, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks a lot, Ed. Yeah, good to see you.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.